This is Mission Control Houston. The Flight Dynamics Officer, Mark McDonald, reports that Orion reached its peak altitude at 9:11 a.m. Central Time just about 1 minute ago at a mission elapsed time of 3 hours and 6 minutes into the flight. Peak altitude was calculated by Orion's navigation systems to be 3,604.2 statute miles. That's the equivalent of 3,132 nautical miles. So Orion is now heading downhill, if you will, on the trek back to Earth and a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean 1 hour 17 minutes from now. Again, peak altitude reached at 9:11 a.m. Central Time. That peak altitude calculated by the Flight Dynamics Officer to be 3,604.2 statute miles or 3,132 nautical miles. As we reported a few minutes ago, earlier, just about 5 minutes or so ago, about 10 minutes ago, the Flight Dynamics Officer reported that the onboard systems aboard Orion has processed a predicted G-force to be built up on the spacecraft. If you were a crew member sitting inside the crew module, you would be experiencing a pull of 8.2 Gs. That's just to put that in perspective, a crew that returns from Earth in a Soyuz spacecraft from the International Space Station pulls about 4.5 Gs as it enters into the Earth's atmosphere. So Orion will be pulling about 8.2 Gs during the course of its high-speed reentry back to Earth. Its predicted splashdown target is just 1.3 nautical miles or 1.5 statute miles east of its pre-flight predicted target. That's almost a bullseye splashdown expected for Orion. And the coordinates of the predicted splashdown site, 23.61 degrees north latitude, 116.46 degrees west longitude, some 600 statute miles west of Baja California. The Spaceflight Meteorology Group here at the Johnson Space Center has maintained its forecast throughout the morning of winds out of 0 degrees at about 12 knots at the splashdown site and wave heights of about 4.5 feet. Those wave heights have picked up ever so slightly since the beginning of the mission just over 3 hours ago, but certainly well within constraints for a safe and efficient recovery of Orion once it's on the water. The next critical milestone for Orion is coming up in just 10 minutes, the separation of crew module from the service module. We're expecting the upper stage, the Delta IV, to maneuver the vehicle into the correct separation orientation. Once Orion separates, it will maneuver 180 degrees through the use of its thrusters to place its heat shield forward for the start of its high-speed return back into the Earth atmosphere. Entry interface is just under an hour from now, and that's where rubber meets the road, if you will, with the testing of Orion's heat shield to repel temperatures that will build upon Orion up to about 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and that all in preparation for the rapid-fire succession of a series of 11 parachutes that will pull the forward cover at the top of the spacecraft off, and then enable the drogue chutes and then the main parachutes to deploy in sequential fashion. And just in terms of geography, just a minor correction to what I had been indicating earlier. The splashdown target for Orion would put about 275 miles west of Baja, about 603 miles southwest of San Diego. That's the port at Naval Base there to which Orion will be returned to as it is towed back into port over the next few days by the USS Anchorage once it's secured the well deck of the Anchorage. So the splashdown target for Orion, depending on how you look at it geographically, is going to be about 275 miles west of Baja, about 630 miles southwest of San Diego. To recap all of the events of the day, has been an historic day as America takes its next step in space exploration with the launch of Orion atop the Delta IV Heavy rocket occurring on time at 6:05 a.m. Central Time, 7:05 a.m. Eastern Time from Launch Complex 37 at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. Some 6 minutes and change after launch, first critical Orion program milestones were achieved with jettisoning of the three large fairing panels surrounding the service module mass simulator article atop which the Orion spacecraft is mounted. That was followed just moments later by the jettisoning of the launch abort system that completed, again, the first two major programmatic milestones. The upper stage of the Delta IV rocket fired twice, first for 11.5 minutes to place Orion its first elliptical orbit of the Earth, followed by a second firing at the 1 hour 55-minute mark into the flight. That was a 4-minute 35-second burn that broke Orion out of low Earth orbit and sent it through the Van Allen radiation belt for the first of two such transits through the radiation belt. Second one is coming up. Orion reached its peak altitude, 9:11 a.m. Central Time, of 3,604.2 statute miles above the Earth, the farthest any human-occupied or human-rated spacecraft has been in 42 years since flight of Apollo 17, the final human mission to the moon. We're now standing by for the separation of the crew module from the service module less than 5.5 minutes from now. Atop the upper stage of the Delta IV rocket, Orion is in the proper orientation for its pyrotech separation from the service module mass simulator. Standing by for that major milestone, 3 minutes and 45 seconds from now. The upper stage of Delta IV has been placed in what is called free drift. Its thrusters commanded to being disabled temporarily to prevent any inadvertent perturbations on Orion at the time of crew module separation. Once the Orion is free flying on its own for the first time, the Delta IV's attitude control system will be re-enabled. The second stage goes back into its own attitude control in order to provide the correct orientation for its firing for a third time of its engine to dispose it into the Pacific Ocean, well away from Orion's splashdown point. Coming up on the 2-minute mark until Orion flies free for the first time. After reaching a peak altitude of 3,604.2 statute miles above the Earth, Orion is now 3,315 miles in altitude, statute miles. 1 minute, 20 seconds until Orion separates from the upper stage of the Delta IV. Inside 30 seconds now until crew module separation. Crew module separation is now confirmed at 9:28 a.m. Central Time. Orion flies free for the first time in its history at a mission elapsed time of 3 hours 24 minutes into its maiden flight. Orion currently processing excellent guidance commands through its onboard system, its thrusters providing perfect control. We have very stable spacecraft, now at an altitude of 3,200 statute miles above the Earth. Time to splash down, 59 minutes. As we take this major milestone to the next step in human space exploration for the United States of America on board the International Space Station, the Expedition 42 crew has been watching activities throughout the course of the morning with great interest, led by Commander Butch Wilmore. There is a still picture of the crew from left to right: Alexander Samakutiaya, Anton Skaparov, Samantha Cristoforetti of the European Space Agency, and Butch Wilmore watching the launch of the Delta IV rocket that took place at 6:05 a.m. Central Time, 7:05 a.m. Eastern Time. The crew has been following all of the activities yesterday's scrub and all of the activities throughout the course of the day today in this maiden flight of Orion with great interest as they are using the International Space Station, of course, as a test bed, as a platform for technology development and demonstration for all the hardware that will be vital for a trip to Mars in the not-too-distant future. So to recap, Orion is flying free for the first time in its history, having separated just a few moments ago from the upper stage of the Delta IV rocket and the service module that served it so well throughout the course of the day today. Launch occurring 3 hours 26 minutes ago, and we are now just 57 minutes away from splashdown in the Pacific Ocean. We are expecting on target, almost a bullseye splashdown for Orion. We'll be back with all of that a short time from now, but at this moment, let's go back to where, and welcome back to the Orion Flight Control Room here at Mission Control in Houston, where the team of flight controllers under the direction of myself and the lead flight director on console as they have been since 3 hours this morning, and now are heading into the home stretch of the milestone mission for the United States. While you were at Hangar AE with Randy Dean, Seraphin pulled his team of flight controls here for an extension of the power-up of Orion once it is on the water in the Pacific Ocean. So that power-up extension to keep Orion powered up from a nominal time, 15 minutes after splashdown, has been approved. So Orion will stay powered up now for an hour after its predicted splashdown is 33 and a half minutes from now. And that will enable Lockheed Martin to gain some valuable data on the thermal effects after Orion is back on Earth, so that it will enhance the post-flight analysis of all of Orion's systems and how they fared during its flight of 4 hours and 23 minutes. Just a few moments ago, the upper stage of the Delta IV rocket and its attached service module that Orion had been attached to, it performed a final burn of that upper stage engine, a disposed burn, if you will, to place at a safe distance away from Orion, and it will plummet into the ocean to burn up in the Earth's atmosphere, its job having been well completed throughout the day today. So the next major milestone we're looking at is just 7 minutes from now. It will be about a 10-second firing of the thrusters on Orion, what is called the crew module raise burn. It's essentially burn to test the thrusters and to slightly orient the spacecraft into the proper attitude or orientation for its entry into the Earth's atmosphere, which is scheduled just 22 minutes from now. Orion flying free is over the Pacific Ocean, currently at an altitude of 1,643 statute miles, having reached its peak altitude at 9:11 a.m. Central Time this morning. Its peak altitude reached 3,604 miles, statute miles above the Earth, the farthest any human-rated or human-occupied spacecraft has flown away from Earth since Apollo 17, 42 years ago in December 1972. About 17 minutes after reaching peak altitude, the crew module separated from the upper stage of the Delta IV rocket and its accompanying service module. The guidance officer here in Mission Control reported that all of Orion's guidance systems were in excellent shape and that its thrusters were providing excellent control. Earlier, Flight Dynamics Officer Mark McDonald here in Mission Control took a look at the guidance data being received from onboard computers on Orion along with its GPS system and calculated a splashdown target point of 23.61 degrees north latitude, 116.46 degrees west longitude out in the Pacific Ocean. That's just 1.3 nautical miles or 1.5 statute miles east of the pre-flight target that had been calculated for Orion's return to Earth. That's almost a dead-on bullseye splashdown that is predicted for Orion. It will be pulling about 8.2 Gs at the peak of its velocity back to Earth, which will reach about 20,000 miles an hour at the time of entry interface when it's about 400,000 miles above 400,000 feet above the Earth's atmosphere, heading for its high-speed reentry back towards Earth, and a splashdown just 30 minutes from now at 10:28 a.m. Central Time, 8:28 a.m. Pacific Time. The splashdown target is 275 miles west of Baja California, 630 miles southwest of San Diego. The port of San Diego, where the naval base in San Diego is located, is the port of call for Orion once it is towed back under the auspices of the USS Anchorage, which is in the splashdown zone. The USS Anchorage, a San Antonio-class amphibious transport dock, is the second ship of the U.S. Navy ever to be named after Anchorage, Alaska. Its keel was laid down on September 24, 2007 at the Avondale Shipyard in New Orleans and then owned by Northrop Grumman Ship Systems. That ship was launched back on February 12, 2011. It is also being assisted in the recovery operations today by the U.S. naval ship Salvor, a Safeguard-class rescue and salvage ship, the second U.S. Navy ship of that name. It launched on July 28, 1984, and was commissioned on June 14, 1986. Airborne in the splashdown zone is also the Icana unpiloted airborne vehicle that we are hoping will provide views of Orion under its three main parachutes as it descends towards its splashdown target. And there is a live view from the Icana right now as it is just awaiting the arrival of Orion, flying at an altitude of some 20,000 feet above the Earth over the Pacific Ocean. We're about two minutes away from the raise burn, as it is called, this brief firing of Orion's thrusters to fine-tune its orientation relative to the angle of attack that it will be arriving at once it enters the Earth's atmosphere just 18 and a half minutes from now. Orion using its strings of thrusters, two redundant strings of thrusters, 6 thrusters to each string to provide the proper orientation for this so-called raise burn. Again, this raise burn is simply a test of the thruster system before Orion begins to plummet back into the Earth's atmosphere. A series of critical activities will be happening in rapid-fire succession once Orion reaches the Earth's atmosphere. The jettisoning of the forward bay cover that is basically at the very top of the spacecraft That will expose the variety of parachutes that we'll talk about once again in just a moment. Orion now has maneuvered into the correct orientation for its raise burn and for its ultimate angle of attack into the Earth's atmosphere. And the raise burn is in progress. Good control by the Guidance Navigation and Control Officer. And the raise burn is complete. We are now into the coast to entry segment of this flight. Orion currently targeting a splashdown point with the coordinates once again from the Flight Dynamics Officer of 23.61 degrees north latitude, 116.46 degrees west longitude. That should put its splashdown just about a mile and a half, 1.5 statute miles east of the intended splashdown target that had been predicted and modeled for this brand new spacecraft pre-flight. The parachute system that will enable Orion to descend from a blistering speed of 20,000 miles an hour at entry interface to a gentle 20 miles an hour at splashdown just about 11 minutes later. The Orion again will be entering the atmosphere and will start heating up and slowing down due to the drag of the atmosphere. At about 24,000 feet, the forward bay cover parachute mortars will fire to pull the 3 chutes above the vehicle. About 1.5 seconds later, at 23,400 feet, that forward bay cover is jettisoning. It will be jettisoned, exposing the drogue, pilot, and main parachutes. 2 drogue mortars will fire about 2 seconds after the forward bay cover is jettisoned, and the drogue parachutes will unfurl, stabilizing the crew module. Some 56 seconds later, the drogue parachutes are released. 3 pilot mortars will fire at approximately 7,980 feet, releasing the 3 pilot parachutes, which in turn pull the main parachutes out. The pilot parachutes release from the main chutes, allowing the mains to unfurl. Both the drogue and the main chutes will reef at deployment, which is a gradual unfurling of those chutes, preventing a rapid deceleration and reducing the possibility of damaging the parachutes themselves. These main parachutes will reef by opening to about 3% of their full size for 8 seconds, then about 10% of their full size for another 8 seconds. Then they'll be fully opened until splashdown, at which time they'll be released from the crew module. The 3 main parachutes, as you've heard described in other discussions throughout the course of our broadcast today, are quite impressive. These 3 chutes, when fully deployed, stretch the length of a football field. They're each 116 feet in diameter, 220 feet in total length. Once launched from Complex 37 at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station 4 hours 10 minutes ago. Orion is now less than 14 minutes from its return to Earth, anticipating the succession of events that will begin 3.5 minutes from now at the point of entry interface, where Orion will reach a velocity of some 20,000 miles an hour, some 84% of the velocity that a spacecraft would encounter on a trip back from the moon. And now we're receiving live video from Orion from inside the crew module and one of the flight test cameras. 3 minutes away from entry interface. Orion right on track, its guidance perfect. We may be experiencing a telemetry loss of signal during a brief blackout period after entry interface when the plasma effects begin to build around the spacecraft. That may begin at an altitude of about 374,000 feet, may continue up until about 151,000 feet, but this is a variable, and we'll stand by to see if, in fact, we do lose any data during this brief blackout period, and if so, for how long. Everything quiet here in the flight control room. Flight controllers under the direction of Mike Serafin, the lead flight director, watching their data. Inside 2 minutes until entry interface. Orion now 132 miles above the Earth, range to splashdown 1,200 miles. 11 minutes until splashdown. Coming up on 1 minute until entry interface. Standing by for entry interface. Orion now at an altitude of 470,000 feet, 900 miles from its splashdown target. Guidance officer confirms that Orion has reached entry interface. The moment of truth for Orion for the next 9 minutes, 45 seconds. And as expected, we have reached a loss of telemetry as we enter this brief blackout period. At the time of the blackout, the flight dynamics officer reported that all of Orion's systems looked perfect. This is the point in time where Orion would be experiencing its peak heating of some 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit as it barrels through the Earth's atmosphere, traveling about 20,000 miles an hour, some 84% of the velocity of a spacecraft returning from the moon. We're 4 minutes away from the jettison of the forward bay cover at the very top of the spacecraft that will begin the chute deployment sequence. And we've reacquired signal from Orion, good data being processed. This view from the Icana unpiloted airborne vehicle over the Pacific Ocean, over the splashdown zone. Time to splashdown 7 minutes. Range to splashdown 127 miles. And now this view from Orion, its thrusters maintaining control. Flight Dynamics Officer reports that we're tracking right down the middle. G-force is building up on Orion, now almost to 3 Gs. A predicted G-force load of some 8 to 8.3 Gs expected. And the Global Positioning System satellites have a good lock on Orion as it heads toward its splashdown target. We're 2.5 minutes away from forward bay cover jettison, and this view again from the Icana aircraft over the splashdown zone. Orion at 125,000 feet. Healthy thruster system reported by the propulsion officer here in Mission Control. Passing through 80,000 feet. Range to splashdown about 5 miles. Passing through 60,000 feet. Orion has gone subsonic. Standing by for forward bay cover jettison. $35,000 feet. That view of Orion from the Icana. $25,000 feet. Time to splashdown less than 4 minutes. Forward bay cover has been deployed. Drogues have been deployed. Great video from the Icana. $15,000 feet until splashdown. Coming up on main chute deploy. From a waypoint over the Pacific Ocean, there is your new spacecraft, America. Drogues away. Main chute deploy. On mains, everything looking good. Good reefing reported. $4,000 feet. Three good main chutes reported from the USS Anchorage. That's confirmed here in Mission Control. From a high-speed rate of 20,000 miles an hour to a gentle return back to Earth more than 4 hours and 20 minutes after it took off on a Delta IV heavy rocket from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. $3,200 feet now until splashdown. $2,200 feet now. Winds at the surface just about 12 knots. Wave heights no more than about 4.5 feet or so. Perfect conditions for Orion's homecoming. This view from Orion itself of the chutes, helping it to descend gently towards its splashdown in the Pacific. 1,000 feet. Just a few hundred feet until splashdown. $100 feet. We have splashdown. Splashdown confirmed at 10:29 a.m. Central Time. Orion is back on Earth. America has driven a golden spike as it crosses a bridge into the future. And we now have confirmation that Orion is stable 1, upright. Orion splashdown at a mission elapsed time of 4 hours and 24 minutes. And the crew module uprighting system is now being activated. These are the 5 inflatable airbags at the top of the spacecraft to ensure that Orion remains in an upright position. And you can see it on the water. The flight dynamics officer now has provided a final splashdown target in the Pacific with a latitude of 23.6 degrees north latitude, 116.46 degrees west longitude, a bullseye splashdown for America's newest spacecraft. Splashdown occurring once again at 10:29 a.m. Central Time, 8:29 a.m. Pacific Time, at a point some 270 miles or so west of Baja, California, about 630 statute miles southwest of San Diego. This is Mission Control Houston, here in the flight control room. Procedures for post-splashdown activities and the monitoring of data. And there you can see in the mission director's room at Hangar AE at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, smiles, exuberance, celebration. Orion's maiden flight from start to finish was picture perfect. Significant milestones achieved for the Orion program as we move forward towards future steps that will ultimately take us to Mars. But this day belonged to the team all the way around: Lockheed Martin, United Launch Alliance, NASA, all of the contractors involved in the development and testing of Orion for what turned out to be the most perfect flight you could ever imagine in a first flight of a vehicle that was being tested, a brand new vehicle launched on a Delta IV rocket, a splashdown right on target in the Pacific Ocean, a significant milestone for America's space program. That view from the Icana is one of the Zodiac craft moving toward the location where Orion is gently bobbing in the Pacific Ocean, upright in Stable 1, with all 5 of its inflatable airbags having inflated properly to maintain it at a 180-degree orientation upright. It splashed down Stable 1 and stayed in that configuration through the time that its airbag system was deployed. Every single system on this spacecraft functioned by the book from start to finish. To recap, Orion, following its launch, made 2 orbits of the Earth, The first elliptical, the second highly elliptical, boosted towards its point in the sky and into deep space by the upper stage of a Delta IV rocket that launched the vehicle from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station and Launch Complex 37 at 6:05 a.m. Central Time, 7:05 a.m. Eastern Time. Orion passed through the Van Allen radiation belt twice, all of its systems functioning perfectly, no effects whatsoever on the shielding or the computers or the avionics of the craft, reaching a peak altitude at 9:11 a.m. Central of 3,604.2 statute miles. The crew module separated from the service module right on time at 9:28 a.m. Central Time, and then we moved towards the critical entry phase. Once again, this view we're looking from one of the helicopters, providing sequential still video of Orion in the water, perfectly upright, having splashed down upright, releasing its parachutes,